Who are these people? Well, this is the brother of the former Vice President, Joe Biden. His name is Frank Biden. This is his other brother, James Biden, a fellow profiteer. This lady in the bottom left is Valerie Biden, also a profiteer. She is Joe Biden's sister, helped run his Senate campaign. On the bottom right is Ashley Biden, Joe Biden's daughter. And in the middle with the crack pipe is Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son. All of them have been involved in nepotistic profiteering. Some of them have been involved in criminal acts, including Joe. This is Joe Biden's sister, Valerie. She worked on his Senate campaign. A little bit nepotistic, but not illegal. Maybe she was just good for the job. What's fishy, though, is she also worked for a firm named Joe Slade White and Company. The only two executives listed at the firm were Joe Slade White and herself. And yet, the firm received large fees from the Biden campaigns that Valerie was running. $2.5 million in consulting fees flowed into her firm from the Citizens for Biden and Biden for President Inc. during the 2008 presidential bid alone, according to the New York Post.
When, as a young father, Joe Biden decided to commute home every day, it was a decision that tells us a lot. Not just about the kind of man Joe Biden is, but also the kind of leader he's become. Because each night, riding home on the train, seeing the lights on in the houses, he knows the conversations mothers and fathers are having over the kitchen table. Will I have a job next month? Can we get Mom the MRI she needs? Will our retirement savings be there when I need them? Will we be able to send the kids back to college next semester? Joe Biden has never forgotten where he came from.
I actually like Dick Cheney, for real.
Out of courage.
Mr. Vice President?
And is it any wonder that when
Do you remember the time
matter most to someone,
that we were the new kids in town?
stands their ground,
How many startups do you know that get the launch from the Oval Office? Probably none. Well, here's one, Startup Health by Dr. Howard Krein. Got to go in 2011 straight to the White House and meet President Obama and Vice President Biden, and they were chosen and given massive government contracts for their company, worth millions of dollars. They hardly had a website and they're already in the White House. The day after they met the Vice President and President, they would be featured at a large healthcare tech conference being run by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and startup health executives became regular visitors to the White House, attending events in 2011, 2014, and 2015. How did they get access to the highest levels of our government? It probably helps that Howard Krein's wife is Ashley Biden, Joe Biden's daughter. You may remember the billions spent on a healthcare website that didn't work, that was supposed to tell you your new amounts under Obamacare. It never did get fixed. Joe Biden's brother Frank ought to be in jail. Aside from the profiteering rings which involve charter schools in Florida, which he nearly bankrupt, and the tens of millions of dollars that he benefited from in the Obama-Biden regime, this scumbag was involved in a hit and run where he murdered a young father who was walking to pick up his daughters and avoid paying the orphan family a single cent for over 20 years. What a guy. Listen to what Frank did to avoid paying. This guy lives in a $600,000 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom home with his wife in Florida. They each have $40,000 Range Rovers, and yet when the lawyer for the man he killed, Michael Albano, tried to garnish Frank's bank account at Wells Fargo, he found it nearly empty. Because Frank just moved the money out. He didn't want to pay. And he's made his money from lucrative contracts from his brother. It's sick. No wonder his nephew was banging his dead brother's wife and then cheated on her with hookers, one of whom he knocked up, and then he tried to deny that it was his kid. Crackheads, hit and runs. This is the Biden family.
Amy's exclusive interview with Hunter Biden, son of the former vice president, who's found himself, as you know, at the center of the political firestorm over the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Amy.
Good morning again, Robin. Yeah, this was a wide-ranging interview where no questions were off limits. And when I sat down with Hunter Biden at his home in Los Angeles, he opened up about his relationship with his father, his feelings about President Trump and his children, and his tough battle with addiction.
Do you think you're a distraction right now to your father's campaign?
No, personally, myself, I'm not necessarily a distraction to his campaign. I'm never a distraction to my dad. But as it relates to actually going and being on stage with him, this is not a family business. Everybody kind of thinks that that somehow, whether it's a compliment that we're like the Kennedys or whether it's a backhanded compliment like you're the Trumps, my dad has a job. But that does not mean that I had ever had any plans to go do rallies and talk about Donald Trump's kids, and I never will. That's not what Bidens do. My dad doesn't go after other people's kids.
Mr. President, the resolution now before the Congress similarly is clear and more focused than previous drafts. It is not perfect, but it acknowledges the core concerns that Senator Lugar and I and others raised, and which have been raised by such senators as Hagel and Specter and many others. Considered in the context of the President's speech this week and his address last month to the United Nations General Assembly, this resolution, though still imperfect, deserves our support, and let me explain why. First, the objective is more clearly and carefully stated. The objective is to compel Iraq to destroy its illegal weapons of mass destruction and its programs to develop and produce missiles and more of those weapons. President Bush did not lash out precipitously at Iraq after 9/11. He did not snub the UN or our allies. He did not dismiss new inspection regimes. He did not ignore Congress. At each pivotal moment, he has chosen a course of moderation and deliberation, and I believe he will continue to do so. At least that is my fervent hope. I wish he would turn down the rhetorical excess in some cases, because I think it undercuts the decision he ends up making. But in each case, in my view, he has made the right, rational, and calm, deliberate decision.
My dad doesn't go after other people's kids. He just doesn't. Never has. Who cares? Look, like I've said, I've been through some stuff in my life. I've been through some real stuff. This isn't real stuff.
What should people know about Hunter Biden that they don't know?
like every single person that I've ever known. I have fallen and I've gotten up. I've done esteemable things and things that have been in my life that I regret. Every single one of those things has brought me exactly to where I am right now, which is probably the best place I've ever been in my life. I've gone through my own struggles.
In and out of rehab 7-8 times.
Say it nicer to me. Sought treatment
Sought
for
treatment.
an issue like
Sought
most
treatment
people.
for substance abuse
Yes,
issues
so
7 or 8
insensitive.
times. I'm so sorry. But I wonder, I think this is a human question.
Yeah.
Do you worry?
No, but for real, let me say
Do you
something.
worry that all of this noise, even though it's just noise,
No, I
it's
don't
still
worry.
that it could affect your sobriety?
Of course. Look, you don't want to live in the worry of it, because then you're feeding the beast. I have no answer other than this. You got to live in the connections that you have to healthy things. And I have so many of them. And I got to live there instead of living in fear like, oh my God, the stress is going to make me drink or the stress is going to make me use.
President Trump likely will see or at least read about this interview. Anything you'd like him to hear from you?
No. I mean, really, no. It's really hard for me to say anything snarky right now or combative, because I was raised to respect that office. I don't know. It's making me emotional.
Why do you think you're getting emotional?
Because I'm really proud of being an American.
This was a wide-ranging interview where no questions were off limits.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton. We had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. I had it all 3 years ago.
This was a wide-ranging interview where no questions were off limits.
This is James Biden, Joe Biden's brother. In fact, we'll put Hunter Biden up here too, Biden's son, because they were involved in some criminal enterprises together, including the third largest Ponzi scheme in the history of the United States that you never heard of. Alan Stanford convicted in $7 billion Ponzi scheme. If it wasn't for Bernie Madoff, or Alan Stanford would probably be the world's most infamous Ponzi schemer. But a Texas jury on Tuesday still found Stanford guilty of committing a $7 billion fraud, convicting him on 13 of 14 counts alleged by federal prosecutors. And then we learned from the Wall Street Journal, Stanford had links to a fund run by the Bidens. A fund of hedge funds run by two members of Vice President Joe Biden's family was marketed exclusively by companies controlled by Texas financier R. Alan Stanford, who is facing Securities and Exchange Commission accusations of engaging in an $8 billion fraud. Well, he got convicted, we already know. The $50 million fund was jointly branded between the Bidens' Paradigm Global Advisors LLC and Stanford Financial Group entity, and was known as the Paradigm Stanford Capital Management Core Alternative Fund. Stanford-related companies marketed the fund to investors and also invested about $2.7 million of their own money into the fund. According to lawyers for the Paradigm Global Advisors is owned through a holding company by the Vice President's son Hunter and Joe Biden's brother James. Joe Biden and Barack Obama made slavery great again by bombing Libya and handing the country over to Al-Qaeda. You could buy a human being for $400 in Libya after they got done liberating it from Gaddafi.
The United Nations says growing numbers of African migrants passing through Libya are being sold as slaves by traffickers or militia groups before being held for ransom. The UN's migration agency interviewed West African migrants who told of being bought and sold in garages and car parks in the southern city of Sabah, one of Libya's main migrant smuggling hubs. The head of the UN agency's Libya mission gave more details at a news conference in Geneva.
If you go to the market and you can pay between $200 and $500 to get a migrant that will work with you on your daily jobs or support your work. After you buy, this person is handed over to you. Again, then it becomes your responsibility. Many of them escape, many of them are kept in bondage, and many of them are even imprisoned inside an area where they are forced to work on a daily basis.
There are also claims that women have been bought in Libya and forced to be sex slaves. The new evidence suggests that slave markets are becoming much more open, trapping sub-Saharan migrants who cross the desert heading for Europe. The UN is helping some of them to return home.
All the accusations about Donald Trump being a racist, you made slavery possible in North Africa again after being abolished. You murdered people in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Libya, too many to name, and you profited from every single enterprise, including Iraq. Now, after blowing up all their homes and infrastructure, the U.S. hired itself to rebuild it. Except much of the rebuilding was never done. But come and look at this contract. Guess whose name is on the dotted line? James Biden. November 4th, 2010. Hillstone International CEO visits Joe Biden, and 3 weeks later they got a contract to build 100,000 homes in Iraq. And James Biden was appointed to be the vice president of the company. The deal was worth $1.5 billion. In 2013, Vice President Biden and his crack-addicted degenerate son Hunter Biden traveled to China to meet with leaders of the Communist Party. Pay to play started right away. Having been pushed out of the hedge fund Ponzi scheme with Stratford, Hunter became a lobbyist for the online gambling, a niche everyone knows was capitalized on by the Northeast mob syndicates, including the politically connected Boston Bulger family. Whitey Bulger was at one point America's second most wanted man. However, his brother was the Senate president in John Kerry's state, Massachusetts, and his nephew became a business partner of Hunter Biden, as did John Kerry's stepson, Chris Hines, and John Kerry's campaign advisor, the now criminally indicted Devin Archer. The trio would set up several businesses, all with ties to Communist China.
I state your name.
I, John F. Kerry,
Do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
that I bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
That I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter.
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Senator Biden was now Vice President Biden, and Senator Kerry was now the Secretary of State. Their children created Rosemont Seneca Partners, a private equity firm, and within months of opening their doors, the Bidens went to China. Hunter had already failed a drug test in the Navy, but within just 10 days from meeting the communist leadership in China, the easily compromised Hunter Biden scored a $1 billion deal. That is more than Goldman Sachs, or UBS, or Morgan Stanley. The Chinese government created the Bohai Harvest RST Investment Fund. RST stands for Rosemont Seneca Thornton Group. We will call it BHR for short. BHR was comprised of 2 Chinese and 2 American organizations. Bohai Investment Fund backed by the Bank of China, and Harvest Fund Management partly backed by Deutsche Bank, a favorite of Jeffrey Epstein. The 2 American organizations were the politically connected and newly created Rosemont Seneca, founded by Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, and Chris Hines, and the Thornton Group, founded by Michael Lynn and James Bulger. Hunter was given 10% equity stake in BHR and was placed on the board of directors. Devin Archer and Chris Hines each took 10%, and Archer was also appointed to be the vice chairman. Again, the entire enterprise was co-owned by the Chinese. BHR served the Chinese military interest. Chinese military AVIC bought up an American company, Hennigs, which produced dual-use technology. But Biden and his new communist partners at BHR took 49% stake in AVIC, 51% stake in the American company. AVIC was known for stealing U.S. technology, and the deal to take over Hennigs could not have been done without approval from the highest level. Well, guess what? Barack Obama and Joe Biden approved the deal. Imagine my lack of shock. BHR also put $460 million into Face++ of the Chinese company Make7. This was surveillance tech for China, which was used on Uyghurs to help ethnically cleanse that population. Financed by the Bidens, BHR also helped the Chinese monopolize rare earth metals, all with a blessing. But worst of all, in 2014, BHR took a minority stake in the Chinese General Nuclear industry. China General Nuclear, CGN, stole nuclear secrets from the United States, and convictions have been made. See the story of Alan Ho.
Alan Ho was a senior engineer with a Chinese company called CGN, China Global Nuclear. This is a company that Hunter Biden's investment firm, Bohai Harvest, buys a stake into in 2014.
Alan Ho, who lived 5 miles from Joe Biden's home in Delaware, spent 2 decades acquiring highly guarded atomic technology on behalf of a company controlled by the Chinese military, the China General Nuclear Power Group. Ho's guilty plea deal was struck 2 weeks before Donald Trump became president.
Less than a year later, that same company, CGN, is charged by the FBI with attempting to steal nuclear secrets in the United States, and Alan Ho pleads guilty to those charges.
One of Ho's targets was a unique dual commercial military use nuclear reactor, Schweitzer said.
The central concern about CGN involved this small nuclear reactor that had multiple uses for both civilian use and for military use. It was very intricately designed, but it wasn't just the nuclear reactor. It's also the unique piping system that was used to fuel or more importantly, to cool this nuclear system.
The president of the Government Accountability Institute said, at the time of the FBI's investigation, Hunter's father was negotiating with the Chinese about navigation rights in the South China Sea, and his business partner in Chinese ventures was Chris Hines, the stepson of the then Secretary of State, John Kerry.
Remarkably, when this story broke of the FBI going after CGN, nobody knew the connection. I don't think anybody even imagined the idea that the son of the vice president and this investment firm that was half owned by Chris Hines actually owned a stake in this company.
But it didn't matter. The Bidens and company decided to continue to invest in a communist Chinese nuclear industry that was stealing secrets from the United States. That is treason. But wait, there's more. Another Devin, Hunter, Chris entity called Rosemont Realty was bought out by the Chinese Gemini Investments, which took a 75% stake in a company, a convenient way of paying the trio off. You may have also heard that the richest woman in Russia, the wife of the former mayor of Moscow, gave Hunter Biden $3.5 million. What you might not know is the rest of that story, because this is still yet another connection to China. Because separately from that, on May 6, 2015 to December 8th of 2015, Alina Barterina sent 11 wire transfers worth $391,968 to Bach USA. 9 of the 11 transfers went through Rosemont Centrica. Bach USA made computer tablets with an unnamed Chinese business partner. Gee, I wonder what the money was really for. These weasels weaseled their way into Burham Assets Management, where they did business with Karen Global Enterprise Limited, as well as Harvest Global Investments, both of which are Chinese and run by communists. But finally, one of their deals had some consequences. In 2020, members of the Burnham Financial Group were involved with a $63 million tribal bond scheme. Yeah. John Galanis and his son Jason Galanis defrauded investors in a sham Native American tribal bond scheme. Instead of investing the bond proceeds as promised, the money wound up in a bank in Florida belonging to Galanis and Associates controlled company. On the board of Burham Financial Group was Devin Archer. And the vice president was Hunter Biden. Devin Archer has been indicted along with 6 others in this scam, and Galanis has pleaded guilty. However, Hunter Biden escaped all punishment. Very Epstein-esque. The placement agents in the scheme to facilitate the transaction with customers were Burham Assets Management and the Burham Financial Group and Rosemont Centrica Partners. A double whammy. They stole from indigenous Americans to profit the communist Chinese. America first, am I right? Please take note of this, that all this information has been widely available even without Hunter Biden's sticky laptops of doom. For example, do emails connect Joe Biden to quid pro quo in Ukraine? Something they ironically tried to impeach President Trump for doing. Because quid pro Joe already incriminated himself twice, and it's all on tape.
Biden. How are you?
Very well indeed. As usual when I hear your voice. Thank you.
Well, you are doing very well. Congratulations on getting the new prosecutor general. I know there's a lot more that has to be done, but I really think that's good, and I understand you're working with the rod in the coming days on a number of additional laws to secure the IMF. But congratulations on installing the new prosecutor general. It's going to be critical for him to work quickly to repair the damage Shokin did. And I'm a man of my word. And that now that the new prosecutor general's in place, we're ready to move forward in signing that new $1 billion loan guarantee. And I don't know how you want to go about that. I'm not going to be able to get to Kyiv anytime soon, maybe next month or so. And I don't know whether you could either sign it with our ambassador or if you came here, we could sign it, or if you want, we're inviting Groisman here later. I'm going to be talking to him later this morning, not for that purpose. We're inviting him to Washington, and so I'll leave it up to you as to how you want that done and when you want it done.
I remember going over, convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
Can you imagine if there was a phone call like that made by President Trump? He would have been impeached and convicted. But Joe Biden can do it, and the mass media doesn't even want to report it. Now, this next segment, I have to give you a little bit of background information on these guys before we tie it up with a Biden bow. This is Ng Lep-sung. He's a Chinese billionaire who got 4 years. Ooh, 4 years. That's what happens when you're a billionaire. For, bribing the UN, which included $1.7 million bribe to John Ash, who took it. John Ash was also convicted, but he got abstained. They said a barbell fell on his neck while he was lifting weights at his house. Right. Sung's name also popped up in the Panama Papers for illegal contributions to the Clintons, all of which he was found guilty for. Anyway, some of the goobers dealing with these bribes also were dealing with bribes from this guy, Patrick Ho, who also got convicted after trying to bribe governments in Chad and Uganda on behalf of a giant Chinese energy company. The founder and former chairman of China Energy, Yi Jianming, has tried to distance himself from Patrick Ho and the other goobers. Patrick Ho, interestingly, couldn't get African despots to go along with his bribes, but he got the Bidens to say yes, gifting Hunter Biden a 2.8 carat diamond and a thank you note, to which he was awarded contracts for natural gas in Louisiana on Monkey Island. Upon being arrested and not being able to weasel his way out of it, Patrick Ho made 2 phone calls to James Biden looking for Hunter Biden. He got convicted and ended up at MCC, the same jail as Jeffrey Epstein. But he, like Ng Lapsang, also tried bribing the UN with a little bit more success. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres tried to prevent an audit from the China Energy. Why? Because he had a conflict of interest. He and his officer, Admiral Dawson and Akhil Seth. Antonio refused throughout 2018 to begin any UN audit into China Energy, while there was the US versus Patrick Ho case going on. Why? Because Guterres, former Prime Minister of Portugal, was sitting on the board of Gulbenkian Foundation, which was trying to sell its Partex oil affiliate to China Energy. So they would stonewall the investigations into China Energy at the UN, but Patrick Ho would be convicted anyway for the bribe attempts that he made in Africa, and he would run to the Bidens for help. Antonio Guterres' goober, Amir Dosal, also sat on the board of a very interesting, now infamous company, and I think I will let you see him introduce that company and its founder himself.
I'm now going to invite the person who has been the inspiration behind the Sustainable Oceans Alliance, who really has something called Terramar Project. She controls the oceans around the world. If you were to look up the website, you have the opportunity to buy up parts of the ocean through her. And really, the Sustainable Oceans Alliance came together at the insistence of one person who is in the room. I don't know, I have to look for him. His name is Stephen Haft. Where is Stephen? Oh, Stephen, please get up. Stephen has been a passionate person behind the Oceans Alliance, saying we need to do something, and he got us together, Ambassador Beck and I, and with Ghislaine Maxwell, and we set up the Oceans Alliance, and we are very grateful to Stephen for his support. And therefore I invite my dear friend Ghislaine Maxwell to tell us how we can own the oceans. You have 3 seconds. Thank you. Please.
I'll do my best. First of all, Your Excellencies, Presidents, Lords, ladies and gentlemen, I just would like to thank you so much, and it's such an honor to be here.
Don't worry, I'm not going to make you listen to that witch. Now here's the fun part. I hope you know who that is. Ghislaine Maxwell was Jeffrey Epstein, international kidnapper and child rapist, right-hand woman. It's a little bit odd, and this is all before the sticky laptop, by the way, that the Biden family bought up property on Water Island adjacent to Little St. Jeffrey's, an island of child rape. And you are going to find out when these other hard drives and laptops are revealed. You are going to see just how sick it gets. Rape, human trafficking, incest. There is no bottom to the Biden crime syndicate.